I'm Gab. He's Jules. Blue skies over West London, and bluer still once again over Paris because Paris Saint-Germain, the reigning European champions, have also won the European Super Cup. But Jules, I'm sure that going 2 goals down against Tottenham Hotspur was not part of the game plan.
It was not part of the game plan, Gab. You're right. What was part of the game plan, though, and we expected was the difference in match fitness between the two teams, which is very obvious considering Spurs had been on precedent for 6 weeks, had 6 friendly matches to get ready for the start of their season, when PSG have been training for 6 days after 3.5 weeks of holidays for the players. So that showed, I think, very quickly. Spurs had a very good game plan. They were sharp. They were aggressive. They defended really well. They were good on set pieces, and they scored 2 goals on set pieces when PSG was sloppy for an hour. And what's interesting is that PSG won the Champions League last season and the league, and with a very strong 11 that was always the same 11 starting games. And yet they won this Super Cup on Wednesday night with their bench, with the Serbs, Fabian making a difference when he came on after the hour, and then Kangin Lee and Gonzalo Ramos, the 2 goal scorers, who also scored in the penalty shootout to take the game to PSG. So I thought from what looked like a really bad first hour, after that, things got much better. And it's a team that doesn't give up, really. And it's a wonderful team, considering it's a new goalkeeper, no Fabian or Neves in midfield, going 2 goals down with 5 minutes to go, being sloppy and having only trained for 6 days, they still find a way of winning.
All right, you mentioned the goalkeeper there, elephant in the room. Less than 2 minutes in, we got to get to the Gigi Donnarumma situation. Obviously, we've said it was obvious with the signing of Chevalier, Donnarumma, who had a year left on his contract, and it was a very big contract. It was obvious that he was going to leave the club. He reinforced it with sort of his farewell message to the club and fans. I was still under the impression that he said, like, hey, look, I'll stick around and I'll see off Chevalier like I'm going to see off Keylor Navas. Certainly the reaction of Vincenzo Raiola, who looks after him, suggests that that's not going to happen. You must admit, though, when Chevalier made that absolute horrible mistake on the second goal, was there part of you that was maybe second-guessing Luis Enrique a tiny bit?
Yeah, of course, always. I mean, I think if you were Lucas Chevalier, you would have rather make your debut against Nantes at the weekend in Ligue 1 than in a game like this, of this caliber, with a trophy at stake, and making that kind of mistake. Of course. To be fair, he redeemed himself with a penalty save on Van de Ven. He was good apart from that mistake. Well, he was good. He made the save that you would expect him to make during the game. But that was a roller coaster of a debut. There's no doubt for that. I think he will learn a lot from it. But yeah, it's a massive gamble. When you have the best goalkeeper in the world in your team and you decide to move him on to get a younger goalkeeper, very good too, but right now on potential, not on the level of Donnarumma, even if he has a different profile, even if he's better on the ball, even if he's better in the air, it's still a big gamble to get rid of the best goalkeeper in the world, the one who in a month's time will be crowned and win the Yashin Trophy and be crowned the best goalkeeper in the world. So it was always a big risk and a big gamble. And from what we saw yesterday, it would take a bit of time, I think, for Chevalier to really try to fill those boots and get into that role.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this and Donnarumma's future in more detail later. I do think, obviously, Raiola have very harsh words. Undoubtedly, Paris Saint-Germain want to get a transfer fee for him. He's saying that maybe they shouldn't. They should just let him go for nothing since they don't want him. I do wonder, from like an emotional intelligence kind of classy goodbye standpoint, since Chevalier did nothing to qualify Paris Saint-Germain for this game, could this have been handled differently, where they agree to say, hey, Donnarumma, you play this game, you got us here, and then we have, this will be your farewell, and then we sort it out from there, and Chevalier, you make your debut in Ligue 1. Might that have been an option?
Yeah, I think you're right, Gabby. Yeah, I think it's not a bad idea. I think the thing was that Lille wanted that deal for Chevalier to go to PSG and them getting the money as early as possible, and they put PSG under pressure in a way by saying let's do that deal. And once Chevalier was there, it would have been weird for Donnarumma to train with Chevalier for a few days before this Super Cup final. I don't know, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It probably would have been better to give him that farewell.
I mean, I think as long as you're open and honest about it, it's only 6 days of training, as Luis Enrique, of course, reminded us afterwards. I think it might have been a classier way to say goodbye. But we're going to break this down further on the Gab and Jules podcast, as well as talking some Spurs. All right, let's stick with the Donnarumma situation, Jules. Again, from my standpoint, I think from yours too, this is mainly a money thing. And it's a money thing because Donnarumma, for better or for worse, and it's like one of the oldest things in the book. He signed an enormous contract at Milan when he became a starter at 16. He signed an enormous contract when he was 19 years old. And that put him on a trajectory where people just don't take pay cuts. He had to get an even bigger contract with Paris Saint-Germain when he moved. And again, as Paris Saint-Germain, they move in with younger players. They revisit a lot of these contracts. They make more of them kind of appearance and performance based. And he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to, or he and his agent, they thought that he should receive a further bump in salary, which, would have put him on a par with some of the highest earning players, not just goalkeepers, in the world. To me, that was the main driver. Now, I know, obviously, we can justify this in other ways, and obviously Chevalier better with his feet than Donnarumma. Donnarumma made some big mistakes last season in some high-profile games, also made some tremendous saves. There's an argument to be made that Paris Saint-Germain wouldn't have been European champions without him. Am I right in thinking that if there hadn't been this divide over money, all this business, I mean, Luis Enrique could have lived with the fact that, Donnarumma isn't Alisson with his feet?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's that. Yeah, there's a bit of the profile too, because even before the start of last season, they were already thinking about Chevalier. They were already thinking about getting a goalkeeper better on the ball that could help that kind of build phase, and also probably better in the air on crosses and to come out for the ball, which again is not really Donnarumma's forte. But I think at the end of the day, they just could not agree on extension at a time where both parties wanted the extension. So you're right. It could have been a very different scenario where Donnarumma right now would still be a PSG player, the number one goalkeeper. And with a 4-year contract or a 3-year contract, he could have extended by 2 years easily. So I think it is a bit of a shame that it finishes like that, and he would probably come to the Premier League and might do well, might not. I just think that it got to a point where PSG had to take that decision because they could not have left him stay and run down his contract. They need to do something. They wanted to move for Chevalier. Chevalier wanted to come. He's 3 years younger. And yeah, he's not Donnarumma, obviously, especially not on his line. But he's got other qualities that I think Luis Enrique wanted. And the last thing I would say as well is all those players in the starting 11 and the first subs were Luis Enrique people. Whether they were already there at the club, but he chose them to be in that team. Donnarumma was the only position, the goalkeeper was the only position where it was not Luis Enrique's choice. He was there before. He was kind of imposed on Luis Enrique. And yeah, it was great. PSG don't win the Champions League without Donnarumma. It's clear. But I also think there was a bit of a power flex there from Luis Enrique to say, hang on, I want my guy, and my guy is Chevalier, and I'm going to bring him in, and I'm going to mold him into what I want. And this is going to be definitely my 100% team.
Jules, you said he's probably going to go to the Premier League. Obviously, Manchester United and Manchester City have both been linked, although I am skeptical about the City link, but what do I know? But what I feel pretty confident about is if he's leaving Paris Saint-Germain because he wanted that significant bump to 15 million euros net a season, which if you like your wages weekly and gross is pretty close to £500,000 a week. I don't think he's going to get that in the Premier League because there's nobody who makes that in the Premier League. I think Erling Haaland is the only one. So what does this mean? And how do you see this panning out?
I think he will have to probably want less money. And you're right, nobody's going to give him that. And he's already on 10 million a year in Paris, and he would not want to go for the same amount or less. So he might not be 15. He might ask for 12. Even 12 is a lot on top of the transfer fee because PSG will want some money, and there will be some money involved. Maybe not much, but still in the transfer fee. But more importantly, I think United right now is just cooling everything down. They did make contact with Raiola a few weeks ago. City are the only team right now in for him. But this link and the fact that City won Donnarumma, not that he's, as we said, he's the best goalkeeper in the world. I get that. But he's just not a Guardiola type of goalkeeper, right? You agree with me on this?
Yeah, I agree. Now, I like to think that Guardiola can come up with a game plan that suits his players, but if he wants to play with the back, play from the back, if he wants a guy who can do what Ederson does, yeah. Now, Donnarumma is not a fit. And also, let's not forget, they just spent what 30 odd million on James Trafford, who had a monster season, who maybe physically is maybe more reminiscent of Donnarumma in some ways. He just had a monster season at Burnley. He came through the ranks at Manchester City, which suggests to me, I don't watch the championship, suggests to me he's not terrible with his feet. But clearly at that size, Trafford is maybe not a Guardiola, an Ederson type keeper with his feet either. But if I'm Trafford, I'm going to say, well, what the hell? Why am I here if now you're bringing this guy in who's just, let's not forget, Donnarumma is 26 years old. So he's got a good 10 years at the top left. I wonder if you're Trafford there, how do you feel about that, having this guy come in ahead of you, right?
Yeah, you're right. And the other thing as well, and we touched upon it a little bit earlier, Donnarumma is not a keeper that comes out on crosses, on corners, wide set pieces, everything you want. This is not what he does, despite being so big and tall and massive wingspan. This is one of his weaknesses. And we've seen many goals conceded by PSG on set pieces because he doesn't come up for the ball. And if you want to do well in the Premier League, of all leagues, you have to do well like that. Remember David De Gea coming to Manchester United and being afraid of coming out on set pieces and crosses and corners, and they paid for it. So this old Man City Donnarumma kind of link up is a bit baffling to me. But maybe it will happen, and maybe it's more of a short-term solution for Pep, who knows he doesn't have much time left at City, and maybe wants somebody that on his line can win him games more than really participate in the build-up phases or in the game with the ball. But I'm still quite surprised that they are so keen on him.
In terms of the United angle, I think maybe in terms of style of play, he'd be a better fit. Obviously, Onana, again, much better on the ball. Onana's been absolutely pilloried. I think Onana's not been good. I don't think he's been as terrible as some people suggest.
Yeah.
But with Onana, you have the situation where you have to place him somewhere and try to get some of that money back. Otherwise, and you've already spent, more than 200 million on Mbumo and Mateus Cunha and Sesko. You might spend more money on the midfielder. And you're upgrading a position, sure, that Donnarumma is an upgrade over Onana, but maybe you weren't necessarily planning to upgrade this summer. I think that's what makes it a little bit tough.
Yeah, I agree. And also, Onana is injured, and he will be injured until September. So how do you offload and sell a player that he's not playing, he's injured, that we're not really sure exactly when he'll be back? And that's the problem, because if they don't offload Onana first or find him something, then they can't sign Donnarumma, because if Onana doesn't go on September 1st or by September 1st, you can't find yourself with Onana and Donnarumma both at your club. So this is the problem, I think, for United right now, and probably why they are distancing themselves from the Donnarumma links.
All right, I know you're dying to point out that Ousmane Dembele turned the game and polished his Ballon d'Or credentials.
My Ballon d'Or. Yeah, very much so.
Let's just hope Ballon d'Or voters weren't watching the Club World Cup final when Chelsea
but they were
became
watching
world
the
champions.
semi-final. They were watching the semi-final.
All right, a word on Spurs and Thomas Frank. Now, people who watch Brentford more closely than I do point out that part of Brentford's success under Thomas Frank last season was to kind of go in lockdown mode while still playing with intensity and a lot of the things that make Brentford. They go into lockdown mode and transition and try to hit on the counter and get set pieces against the big clubs, especially away from home, and against the smaller clubs, against the mid-sized clubs. They're much more on the ball. I mean, still direct, but they're much more attacking, basically, against weaker teams. Curious to see whether that would continue with better players at Spurs. I think we got our answer. We were talking off air before, and you said, "Wow, he puts out a lineup with just two attacking players in Kudus and what's it up front?
Richarlison. Yeah.
Richarlison, yes, Rico."
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they can play like that. I don't think they will. You're right. I think we will see a repeat of what he was doing at Brentford in terms of how pragmatic he can be, a back three, a back four, depending on the opposition, home or away. It will evolve quite a lot. And yesterday, it almost worked, to be fair. The game plan, they scored on set pieces. They were very solid defensively with 9 defensive-minded players, as we said. They made 54 passes in the second half, Gabby, in 52 minutes. That's 1 per minute. At this level, in a game like this, with the players that he has, it's not enough. So I'm really hoping there will be variation to the game, and I really think there will be. At least the structure is there, the plan is there, and it was a good debut for him, even if they ended up losing in the end on penalty shootout. But I felt it was good. It's just you can't play like that, every game of the season. So I'm really hoping that we will see, like you said, I think you were spot on. There will be different styles of the Spurs team depending on who they play against.
He also named Cuti Romero club captain. Obviously, Heung-min Son gone. Are you a little bit surprised, given A, his red cards, and B, maybe some of the other stuff we know about him?
Yeah, maybe. Although you could say the other way, and that's the responsibilities that maybe he needs to get that off his game. Maybe. And also, if you look at it, there were not that many contenders. I mean, our boy Ben Davies, for me, he's the captain of this squad. He's not going to play enough, maybe, to be the club captain, and because he's not going to be on the pitch enough. Okay, I get that. So if you take Ben out of the equation, then really Vicario maybe, but he's been there 2 seasons. So then really the rest is young, and the rest is just arrived, or the rest is probably not ready to be a club captain of a side of this side. So yeah, I think it was the one, not by default, this is harsh because he's a World Cup winner too, and he's got leadership qualities. But maybe it's going to be good for him because he will have to calm down a little bit. Although we saw yesterday that there was not much calming down in him in that first half, especially against PSG.
Yeah, that is a good point. I was asking myself, okay, I mean, I think Bentancur is a phenomenal leader, but I'm not sure Bentancur is going to start every game, unlike Romero. And then I thought, well, the obvious one would be Bissouma, and then you remind yourself about Bissouma's disciplinary issues and why he wasn't even involved in this game. And then it becomes, again, like you said, maybe not the fault. Like maybe somebody can make a Van de Ven case or whatever. But yeah, let's see how it works out with Romero. Sometimes people step up into the role.